In the heart of suburbia, a cannabis grower trims a Dagga bud. This is the main ingredient to produce medical marijuana. It's an illegal activity that has flourished in the underground.
The dry plant material, you wash it, filter it through a coffee filter, the alcohol, and then with a rice cooker boil off the alcohol, and you're left with the oil.
Across the country, more and more people are using Dagga for a variety of medical conditions.
If I can prevent my child developing cancer, I mean, wow, what a win. We lost about 5 Costello children last year, and you don't want to have to live through that. I mean, parents should not have to bury their children.
This former IT executive smokes Dagga at short intervals. He says it helps to numb the pain.
Fibromyalgia is a condition that affects your whole body, your joints, your skin, your muscles. Every fiber of your body gets infected with pain.
I've been a physician now for 40 years. I have never admitted a patient to the hospital who's suffered a side effect of cannabis.
But some are against the use of Dagga to treat disease.
There's just an explosion of information and studies that show negative impact, the increase in the prevalence of schizophrenia and psychosis, which is just too dangerous.
This will be tested in court, where expert witnesses have begun arguing for the legalization of medical marijuana. The application was launched by the Dagga couple, arrested for cannabis in August 2010. They are challenging the laws that criminalize Dagga as invalid and unconstitutional.
Because milk is fragrant. Oh,
Don't pet her.
she likes me.
Oh, she does.
Oh, where'd she go?
I don't know. Come.
7-year-old Aiden Freeman was born with a rare genetic disorder that affects most parts of his body. He is one of only 2 people in South Africa with Costello syndrome. There are only 300 reported cases globally.
When he was 18 months old, we finally got the diagnosis of Costello syndrome. So, yeah, and it was from there that we were actually able to start processing. And, you go through a grieving stage, and it took me a long, long while to reach acceptance. They actually at this point still don't know what the cause is.
His mother, Melissa, says her son was having extreme difficulty concentrating at school. This is when she decided to treat his condition with medical marijuana.
He is very hyper. As you can see, he doesn't sit still for 2 seconds. And that was actually one of the main reasons I started on the cannabis oil. He's on a diluted quantity, so he doesn't take your standard adult dosage. So his is diluted sort of 1 to 7, and he takes 4 drops at night. The difference in him within the space of a few weeks, all of a sudden he was able to concentrate at school better. We had a family function where for the first time ever he was actually playing on his own.
Melissa says Aiden recently went into hospital for an operation. She says before he went into theatre, she told the doctors that he was on medical marijuana, just in case there were complications.
When I told his anaesthetist he's on cannabis, he said, "Fantastic, bring it," because we needed it for pre-op, just to calm him down. And Costello kids tend to not respond typically to your chemical drugs. So something that should knock him out would take 2.5 times the normal dosage to get him to go to sleep. And so cannabis was the only thing that actually calmed him down enough so that he was relaxed before his op.
Doctors for Life has joined the government to oppose the Dagga couple's application to legalize Dagga.
I think this is the big confusion. The public seem to think if you speak about medical marijuana, it's certain kinds or hybrids of the whole plant. And there is actually no future in the whole plant because there's just an explosion of information and studies that show negative impact, the increase of in the prevalence of schizophrenia and psychosis, which is just too dangerous.
The Dagga couple's star witness is Professor Donald Abrams, an American cancer specialist with more than 30 years' experience in the field of cannabis research for medical use. He will have to convince the court that Dagga is not harmful to humans.
In this court case, my role is to reiterate that cannabis is useful as a medicine. And again, the committee that I was on in the U.S. National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine clearly outlines those areas where it has been demonstrated in the medical literature that cannabis and its components are very useful. For example, pain, nausea, vomiting, appetite, spasticity, etc.
40-year-old Abi Jurgens, a former IT executive, had to quit his high-paying job when he was diagnosed with a crippling disease which affects his muscles. He says smoking Dagga eases the pain.
When you ingest the oil, it takes about 30 minutes or so for the cannabis to be absorbed into your digestive system and for the medicine to start working. When you smoke it with a bong or a joint, then the effect is immediately. You know, within a minute, you start to feel relaxed. You calm down. You don't feel so anxious about life. And just the pain starts to melt away. It's really a magical thing in my life.
Abi has started weaning himself off the pharmaceutical drugs that he's taking because he says it causes dependency and has already affected his organs.
The medical treatment for fibromyalgia is pain management, basically. No one knows exactly what causes it. Firstly, they would start off with antidepressants. But the antidepressants made me, the side effects was just too much for me. You know, I felt like a zombie all the time. And then, other than that, there's Lyrica as well. That's also basically a drug to calm the brain down. Anti-inflammatories, your muscles spasm up from the disease. However, I got chronic kidney disease from too much anti-inflammatories.
Cannabis is very useful for treating the symptoms related to cancer, but not necessarily for treating cancer itself. Other diseases like multiple sclerosis, patients benefit from decreased spasticity and decreased pain. And then fibromyalgia is a disease that physicians are very perplexed by and don't know what to do with it. And many people report that they benefit from cannabis.
In a middle-class suburb of Johannesburg, not far from the police station, 36-year-old grown man, not his real name, lets us into his world. It's a risky business, which, if caught, could see him being jailed for a long time.
My relationship with the cannabis plant started about 3 years ago. A friend of mine gave me a seed and said, if you want to plant something, plant this. So planted the seed. 6 months later, time to harvest, and realized that this is not the drug that we grew up with. It's actually medicine. Doing more research and then realizing that we cannot afford buying the plant to make the medicine, it's too expensive. And that was the big reason why I started growing.
Growman says when the summer arrives in a few months from now, his plants will be ready for harvest. He only keeps female plants which produce high quality, medical grade Dagga.
We only use the female plants because that's where your majority of your cannabinoids is. if you've got a male plant in between your females, it will pollinate your female. Your female will then start making seed and stop concentrating to make the oil, the medicine you need. And that's why you need to remove the male from your female plant. I'd rather supply the guys that make the oil. I'll make my oil for myself, which is 10 to 20 mils a month, like, for myself and my close family and the people I know.
In March, Rastafarians celebrated when the Western Cape High Court ruled that Dagga could now be grown and used privately at home. However, the police still have powers to arrest people caught with the drug. The state has decided to appeal the court's ruling.
So we are saying that people should have the same right if they want to use cannabis. Now, there are those who prefer not to use alcohol and tobacco. They want to use cannabis, right? And it should be their right to do so. Government does not have the right in a democratic society to prescribe unto individuals what it is that they must put in their body.
Government recently launched a blueprint for South Africa's cannabis industry. It's a detailed document with guidelines for the cultivation of Dagga for medical use with strict controls. Dagga activists say it's a positive step to legalize the drug. In the US, the legalization of Dagga has generated billions of tax dollars for the state.
Many states are realizing in the United States that there's a big economic boom in approving cannabis for recreational or medical use. Colorado, for example, one of our first states to allow recreational use in their first year, made $10 million available to scientists and clinicians who wanted to investigate cannabis because they had such an excess.
The Medicines Control Council has already legalized a range of Dagga medication, which doctors can access by applying for authorization.
The current framework through Section 21 provides that a doctor can, for his patient, apply at the Medicine Control Council, and that the Medicine Control Council would then review that application, and through that mechanism, under medical supervision, the cannabis can be made available to such patient under medical control and supervision.
The huge demand for medical marijuana has fueled a growing black market industry. The drugs are sold online at some pharmacies and at health shops without a prescription. 49-year-old Gerd Bada says he began making his own cannabis oil out of necessity to treat his multiple sclerosis.
The plant itself is very safe. The way we're making it with all the toxic solvents, it has to be extracted with alcohols or some solvents, and those solvents shouldn't then remain in the medicine. That is the second process. Best would be if the government could give us testing facilities. There again, they could make their taxes again, and so on, and take it away take the pressure away from the small man that's got it in his back garden but wants to do the proper thing.
In March 2014, the late IFP MP, Dr. Mario Oriani Ambrosini, told the nation that he was using medical Dagga to treat his cancer. However, when doctors tested his blood, they found the cannabis was contaminated, which severely affected his health.
As we've discovered with Mario, and it's with his permission that I can say this publicly, we tested his blood and we found there was arsenic in the blood and in the urine. Arsenic in the blood or urine is metabolized very quickly, so it will only be present if there's a continuous supply of that contamination.
Mario developed serious health complications from the treatment. He immediately stopped using the tainted cannabis. He died in August 2014 when he took his own life.
The cannabis I was taking was contaminated with arsenic. And myself and 200 people got it from the same source. Ended up having arsenic poisoning because it was grown on soils, on damp mines, probably.
Most of the dispensaries that I'm going to send patients to visit I know that they do testing of the cannabis that they sell to make sure it's not contaminated with herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, or insects, and so that they know what's in it, how much is CBD, how much is THC, etc. There's no standardization, however. Some of the states that have legalized cannabis for medical use are demanding standardization and testing of all specimens or all samples that are sold, but we don't do that in California or San Francisco.
The biggest challenge is for government to legalize Dagga and to ensure it's properly regulated so that the medicine is safe for people to use. Myrtle Clark and Julian Stobbs are recreational Dagga smokers. In August 2010, they were arrested at home and charged for drug possession. But instead of being prosecuted for Dagga, they have taken government to court, arguing that the drug needs to be legalized.
We told the magistrate that we would be applying for a stay in prosecution, which means that our charges would be put on hold until the outcome of our constitutional hearing. So that was granted by the Pretoria High Court in June 2011. Since then, we have been out on 1,000 rands bail each. The case has been postponed twice in the ensuing 6 years since that stay of prosecution for various reasons. The first time the state were just not ready. The second time there weren't enough court dates booked. We'd only booked 10 days and the judge said we need longer than that.
Since the Western Cape High Court ruled that Dagga can now be used at home, the police have come down hard on those caught with the drug. This comes at a huge cost to the state.
Currently it's costing the South African government just over 6.5 billion rand a year. That's 6,500 million rand. That's an insane amount of money just to prosecute, jail, incarcerate, and people that have offended the law with cannabis. It's an insane amount of money, and we really see that it's pointless spending all that money where something like cannabis, which could be regulated properly, would actually drop all of those arrests, the amount of arrests, and the amount of money.
The Dagga couple have assisted people caught with the drug in applying for a stay in prosecution.
We have been saying for 7 years, do not pay the admission of guilt fine. You will have a criminal record that lasts for 10 years. And even after 10 years, it's very expensive and very difficult to get rid of. You then appear before a magistrate and you are granted bail, and then you contact us. And we can apply for a stay of prosecution together with you so that your case is also put on hold pending the outcome of ours.
The Pretoria High Court will sit for the entire month of August to hear the Dagga couple's matter. They are suing 7 government departments, arguing that it's their constitutional right to decide what they put into their body.
If the plaintiffs get their way, it will legalize the sale of psychoactive substances in South Africa.
The trial of the plant, as it is known, is based on the scientific evidence of Dagga for medical use and its perceived harms. Expert witnesses will argue for and against the legalization of the drug.
Cannabis is a plant, it's a flower. It's been a medicine for 3,000 years. It only hasn't been a medicine for the past 75. People should be allowed to access this very useful and important medicine. Cannabis is much healthier for people than both alcohol and tobacco, but those are certainly, alcohol is more than socially acceptable. I've been a physician now for 40 years. I have never admitted a patient to the hospital who's suffered a side effect of cannabis.
The matter was delayed when the state and Doctors for Life objected to it being live streamed. They eventually agreed under strict conditions. Then the state asked for the expert witnesses' testimonies to be excluded because they were not happy with the volumes of scientific evidence.
Even though there are substances or molecules in the Dagga plant that may be beneficial, research has shown that there is sufficient harm in the use of the plant as a whole. To warrant very thorough and very robust investigation.
The trial will also look at other aspects of the cannabis plant, from medicinal uses, recreational, industrial, cultural, and religious practices.
The beauty of this trial is there will be cross-examination, the art of cross-examination, and all of our experts have been briefed in separate occasions in chambers by our advocate Don Mahon, as to what to expect.
Because of delays in the trial, Professor Donald Abrams ended up not taking the stand. He had to fly home to America, which came at a huge cost to the applicants. The drama inside the court spilled out onto the streets of the capital.
Omrioski of IFP said it in Parliament, and people tried to ignore it, but the time has come that we need to liberate the plant. Please free cannabis.
Dagga is a gateway drug to all drugs. I was an ex-drug addict, and I started with Dagga, smoking Dagga. After Dagga, you went into everything.
Should the Dagga couple fail in their bid to legalize Dagga, they could still be prosecuted.
If it doesn't go our way, we will end up back in the Kruger Magistrates Court to face the original charges of, it says on the docket, dealing in drugs. Just this arbitrary drug thing, very, very strange. Dealing in drugs. And the reason we were dealing in drugs is we had more than 115 grams. And 115 grams, scientifically speaking, of course, is you're a dealer.
Melissa says if Dagga is legalized, it will mean that patients like Aiden and others that are already benefiting from the medicine would now be able to use the drug legally without the fear of prosecution.
Aren't you afraid putting yourself out there that there could be repercussions?
I am. I'll be dead honest, but at the same time, I feel it's so important that people like myself, who've got positive experience, that we have to speak about it. We have to get this legalized so that everybody has the same opportunity that that Aiden does in order to prevent cancer or stop pain or improve MS symptoms, or there are just so many advantages to having it legalized.